Welcome back, everyone, to Vox Markets. My name is Paul Hill, and I'm delighted again to be able to speak to CEO Bram Goorden of IXICO, a leading AI-powered medical imaging analytics firm helping big pharma develop new treatments for neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Huntington's. So big welcome, Bram.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, big congrats as well on this morning's positive year-end trading update, with sales increasing 12% to £6.5 million, coming hot on the heels as well of the two contract wins yesterday. So maybe we can start there. Can you just walk us through what's been driving that sort of top-line growth, plus any details you can share on the two contract wins from yesterday?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll be delighted to do that. And as you may remember, these are my first 12 months with the company, right? So I'm sort of concluding a first year, which I think is successful, which has built a great foundation. 6.5 million. What are the three drivers? I've been talking about them before, and we've very much seen them in H2 as well. So first of all, new contract wins, and of course, that's what it's all about, but especially new contract wins in some of these new disease areas, which we set out to target. With Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, because we are that leader, as you know, in the rare neurological disease area, such as Huntington's disease. But so driver number one, new contracts, and especially new disease areas such as Alzheimer's disease. Secondly, contract extensions, and that speaks to that expertise, that thought leadership, which we set out to increase, because IXICO, as you know, has been around since 20 years. So we have that expertise, we're recognized for it, but we really set out to make sure that the market hears even more from us. And that has then resulted in contract extensions with existing companies and programs. And then the third one, very exciting, is that new vertical, which we started to operate in, especially with the diagnostic blood-based biomarkers. And that is really a new client type for us, if you wish, because of course, traditionally, we've always been serving biotech and pharma.
Yeah.
And so if I translate that then now into your second question around the very recent contracts, of which some were as recent as already the past weeks. The first one is indeed in that third vertical, or that new vertical that I mentioned, so blood-based biomarkers, which is very exciting. And I think what's important there is to know that this is not phase one, phase two, phase three. This is actually a solution which will be approved by regulators, of course, if it is being validated against imaging, which is what we do. So this is about supporting a program that will have an immediate impact for a product that will very likely make it to market. And then the second win that we RNS'd yesterday is in Alzheimer's disease with an existing program. And hopefully that sort of proves what I've been talking about, that we really accompany our clients from these early phases through further phases into their development programs. And of course, with that comes new business as well.
Yeah, well, you've certainly been overachieving in that pipeline and the drug development, because I did notice, actually, I mean, not only were you involved in that first FDA-approved treatment for Huntington's, which is a fantastic for all patients around the world, which was announced, I don't know, on the BBC about a month ago. But also, you were involved in the development of that blood diagnostics as well for Alzheimer's. So, how significant are those sort of two major events in terms of showcasing the company's technology to the whole of that sort of sector of neurodegenerative diseases, which seems to be increasingly attracting investment attention as we get more success?
Yeah, no, very good questions. I think they're very different, and I'll start with the second one. So the second one, the Fujirebio blood-based biomarker approval. So that was an FDA approval of the first Alzheimer's blood test. That is revolutionary. I think the entire Alzheimer's field was very vocal about that. And of course, we were very proud, because if you bring such a solution to market, you have to validate it against the gold standard. And the gold standard is imaging. And we are the sole clinical research organization globally, I should say, that really focuses on imaging in the CNS. So that is a very clear one. And that's also why we're focusing so much on it, because we know that this is going to cause a wave of further solutions from other big players. The first one you mentioned in Huntington's disease is a little bit more nuanced, because it wasn't an FDA approval yet. I think it was a milestone which has been achieved in a trial, which gives a path towards FDA approval. And obviously that causes a lot of hope, because this is in Huntington's disease, which is unfortunately a trial where, or an area, I should say, where there is no solution yet. So we have to be a little bit cautious. The solution isn't there yet. The treatment isn't there yet. But I think what Unicure in this case is doing, and the support we're delivering, is indeed a path towards potentially a first disease modifying therapy in that area. And of course, that gives a lot of hope in one of these rare disease areas where we don't have a solution yet.
Yeah. And then just in terms of that pipeline and order book, I saw your order book increasing, in the second half, but also that the sort of those showcase events must be giving you a bit of inbound activity, I would have thought, rather than having sales guys always knocking on people's doors. Now that your name, I mean, you're only a 12 million market cap company, got 3.5 million of cash. So you, in terms of financials, are quite small, but your fundamentals are very strong underneath. It just hasn't been yet reflected in the numbers.
Well, no, I'm glad you say that, and we can have another discussion sometimes around are we undervalued or not. But I would agree, right? And I think we're supporting some of the biggest programs and some of the potential biggest blockbuster drugs for the future in neurology. And so I think if you look at that value that we're providing, clearly, I would say that is not yet fully reflected in the valuation of us as a company. But regardless of that, I think we've got a team of around 90 people here that are very dedicated to do that on a day-to-day basis. And you're right, there is inbound interest. There is clarity, I think, around our strategy, around our platform now. And especially, for example, in Huntington's disease, indeed, I think it's well known that we are that dominant player there. And so the day the BBC started to broadcast some of that exciting news for uniQure, we actually got a lot of inbound calls as well from, I should say, sort of friends and colleagues and customers. So that was very exciting.
Good. And then just looking at sort of like next year and sort of medium term, what are you sort of like indicating in terms of sort of growth top line, and also when you hopefully become sort of EBITDA positive and maybe even cash flow positive?
So for 26, we want to continue on the same path that we set out. As I mentioned, I started 12 months ago, so I especially looked at what was happening in H2 of 25. I'm very happy about what happened there with the order book. So obviously, I want to continue that trend. Currently, we've got an order book that covers around 80% of what we've put out there for guidance. So I think we are quite comfortable about the revenue guidance. I know that that is guidance that everyone will be looking at us to overachieve. And I'm confident that we can do that. I want to give myself a little bit more time going into 26, even if we have some of these wins already under our belt now, to look at whether we need to change anything to the guidance. What you can expect in 26 is, at the one hand, more scientific innovation coming to market, because as you may know, we invested a lot in our platform also over the past 12 months. And so those innovations are now productized and can be commercialized. And then secondly, we will make more noise around our platform itself, because it is sort of that hidden gem of a technology, if you wish, that is under the hood of our business. And I think it deserves more attention, and it can potentially also access new revenue streams. And so leading then to your question around profitability, when we did the capital raise, as you may recall, it was twice oversubscribed earlier this year. It's only 10 months ago. We always said this is going to deliver us profitability in the near term, 2 to 3 years, and I very much stand by that. So I think you should be looking at the 27, 28 mark to have us again in a profitable state. But I think more importantly, we're really investing now to accelerate these revenues and also that valuation, which you alluded to before.
Yeah. And I've had actually an investor question coming in just already this morning. He was asking just in terms of what's bucking the trend, because obviously the contract research sort of like area has been quite weak, but you guys have actually you're bucking the trend. You're doing really, really well. So what, just in terms of that sort of differentiation, what's the magic behind that sort of like outperformance?
So the CRO market in general, or sort of the services market to pharma, has been somewhat slowing down, but it's a massive market, right, Paul? And so if you actually come in with the right strategy, and as you know, we're a highly specialized company, we're really focusing on that neurology field, there's still a lot of business to go for. And so that's exactly what we're doing, what we have been doing. I will say that the trend in neurology is somewhat different than in some other areas. We do actually see that at the moment, for example, in Alzheimer's alone, there's 138 assets in development. And only 2 or 3 years ago, that would only have been a fourth or a third. So we do actually see that there's much more excitement. You've seen some big pharma companies make big bets as well, made acquisitions of biotechs. So while you won't hear me say that it's easy for biotechs. And I've been at that site, and I'm actually part of the board of some of these companies as well. It's still very hard to find funding sometimes. The fact that pharma is really big pharma is now investing in it also gives hope, of course, for some of these smaller biotechs to really fund their programs now.
Mm. And then we've got some big sort of milestone phase 3 contracts coming out from Bristol Myers to do their Coben fire, and then we've got the brain shuttle technology from Roche, haven't we? When are we hoping that those are going to sort of be those are going to kick off? Not, I mean, obviously you haven't won the deals, but as in terms of when they might make decisions, those big pharma.
Well, they're making decisions every day, right? And
Yeah.
actually at AAIC, and I think we may already have spoken about that offline. So the Alzheimer's conference in July, which is sort of the annual fest, if you wish, of pharma in Alzheimer's, especially Roche was bringing very hopeful results. But again, we're talking about results that are now in phase 2, so there's still a long way to go. And unfortunately, that's how pharma goes. It takes time. It's important, of course, that these drugs do deliver on their safety and their efficacy promises. But the work that we're doing, and I think that's what you're alluding to, is of course to make sure that we actually get a role to play in them. And so that is what I'm working hard on, that we're serving our current customers, but that we're also making our inroads into these new ones.
Great. Okay, brilliant. Well, any sort of final words, closing remarks for investors after a very good sort of first 12 months? I know we've got the prelims in December, but anything to just to remind investors about the sort of the key messages?
No, I think if you've been following, or if you want to start following IXICO, I think it is very much about looking, of course, at some of these deals that we will be closing, and that I'm very confident you will also see come into our order book as early as H1 in 26, and then it's already happening as we speak. But also keeping a look at the disease areas in which we're making an impact. If you know IXICO, you know that we are an absolute leader in that rare disease area. And I think what you're witnessing now, and of course everyone can hold us accountable to that, is that we're now really making a much more pronounced impact in some of these big disease areas at both sides of the pond. So, and by that I mean sponsors both in the US and Europe.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks again, Bram. Really well done, and look forward in touching base again for the prelims in December.
Thanks very much, Paul.